Hey, my name is Jordan. I'm here to give you a rundown of all the new content that's being added to Tunefox for the month of February. I'll talk a little bit about the songs and some things to look out for, and then after that I'm going to give some general kind of teacher tips that are going to be applicable to all instruments and all skill levels, and is stuff that I use in my private lessons with my students. All right, starting out on banjo, we've got I Am the Man, Thomas, a classic bluegrass gospel number by Ralph Stanley and the Clinch Mountain Boys. This one was a user request, and with almost every song that we put up, we have links to the original recording. So I want to encourage you guys to use those and be listening to the songs that you're wanting to learn. Listening should be a part of your practice. Okay, so the first thing up for I Am the Man Thomas is the melody, and anytime we have this available, you should start with the melody. The melody is kind of the heart of the tune. The chord changes are based around it. It's very important to learn. So we've got a basic version that's kind of simple, and then we have a more complex one that's a little bit more similar to how Ralph would sing it or how someone would sing this song. And because it's more complex, it's a little bit tougher to play and requires some intricate pick hand movements, so make sure to pay attention to the fingerings and the banjo tablature. Something that you should do with these melodies, besides just playing them, is saying the words and even trying to sing it if you can while you play it. For example, with this one, they drove me up the hills, Thomas, I am the man. They made me carry the cross, Thomas, I am the man. Okay, so that's saying or singing those notes as you play it. It's going to help your memory, and if you have listened to this a bunch, you will start to internalize the way that melody goes, timing, and a lot of other musical aspects, and you won't even realize it, right? You're going to kind of start to ingest the music in a natural way. Okay, so that one that I just demonstrated, again, was more simple. The one that's labeled playing the syllables is just that. Each note that we play is going to be tied to a syllable as it's sung, and even follows a little bit more of the intricate vocal runs, that Ralph might do when he sang this song. They drove me up the hills, Thomas, I am the man. They made me carry the cross, Thomas, I am the man. Okay, a little bit more intricate, a little tougher to play, but really cool. Something else to do besides saying or singing the words as you play the individual melody notes is to say or sing the words as you play the basic chord changes. That can really help you memorize the chord changes. Like so much in my playing is I use lyrics as guideposts, signs for when to change chords, because changes in the melody are directly tied to changes in the chord progression. They drove me up the hills, Thomas, I am the man. They made me carry the cross, Thomas, I am the man. Dun 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 dun. Right? It seems simple, but it's a really good foundational thing to work on. All right, I Am the Man, Thomas, two finger. Two finger is a great style of banjo that only uses two fingers. Usually just thumb and index, although you could also use just thumb and middle if that's more comfortable for you. But it's so simple. It's even, because we've got two fingers, it's an even number of fingers, and it fits really well in a lot of standard timing songs, and you don't have those moments of sort of getting tripped up as we often do with the three-finger style Scruggs banjo playing. And so this one just kind of goes off those main notes in the melody. It has some alternations, like a little alternating kind of roll thing, right? Where we're going thumb, index, and that thumb's alternating from the third string to the fifth string. So I'm going 3, 1, 5, 1, right? So doing a lot of that, and then just some note pinches in there as well. It gives us a really great, strong rhythmic sound that's super fun to play. see we shift up a little bit to the 6th fret, but it's not too bad and is a really cool part in the song. Another thing, this one ends with notes that lead back into the beginning, so it's designed for you guys to play it over and over. So once you get down a tune, you know, at first when you're learning a tune, you got to learn it in pieces a lot of the time. That's fine. But once you get the whole tune down, it's really good to do the whole tune a bunch of times, right? And so this one ends with those lead-in notes, right? And they're marked with little greater than signs above them. Those are accent signs, so it's meant for you to play those a little bit harder. When we add an accent and stress those lead-in notes, it makes them a little bit more powerful, and it makes it a little bit more obvious that we're leading into something. Builds that anticipation and that drama. And as always, with any of these songs, check out those licks. There's a lot of great options to add some more embellished stuff, or mix in some classic bluegrass vocabulary, or just learn a new melodic lick. One of my favorites in this one is the single string lick for measure 4. It's based off that opening kind of chromatic lick for the song Highwaymen, or the Highwaymen. And when we add that into the song, here's what we get. Right, and just because it's 2-finger, don't think that means it's only for beginners. Learning to play in this style, I think, can be a very powerful asset for any Scruggs style banjo player. I added a few more takes on this to give you guys some different options depending on, you know, what your all's taste or interests are. One of the other ones is using all index-led forward rolls. That means we're going to be doing forward roll motions where we've got this kind of thumb, index, middle motion in the pick hand, but because I've labeled it index-led, that means we're going to be starting on the index finger. Right? So a lot of the times when starting forward rolls, we start with our thumb. This is just a different perspective on the same forward roll motion. And it's something that Ralph Stanley did a lot. You know, a lot of his solos, when you analyze them and look at what's going on in the tablature and kind of read it and really think about what's going on, or just listening and learning it a lot, you know, he uses his index finger a lot to grab those melodies and a lot of like continuous forward roll motion. So this is a simplified kind of version of that. Okay, again, this one ends with those lead-in notes that lead back into the beginning of the song. You know, very often these lead-in notes that I'm talking about are actually used to start off the song. So I wanted to incorporate it in a way that doesn't confuse beginners and also sort of secretly programs you guys to learn to feel these kickoff notes, because when you're practicing the whole song over and over and you accent those kickoff notes, you learn to feel those kind of 3 hard beats that lead in to the start of the song. And sometimes when you have those 3 notes at the start of the song, for a lot of beginners and intermediate players, it can be confusing and just throw them off. But this way, if we start right on the downbeat and you're playing along with the Tunefox player where you can hear how this is supposed to sound and you've got that backing track going, you hear everything locks in with the band, with the bass and the guitar, and then everything's just nice and even. And again, through repetition, you will learn to feel those lead-in notes. We also have a Ralph Stanley style transcription. So this is based almost note for note on the way that Ralph kicked off this tune on the record Cry from the Cross, which also happened to include a young Ricky Skaggs and a young Keith Whitley. So that one is pretty cool, just has a lot more intricate fret hand embellishment with those quick slides and quick hammer-ons and pull-offs. And also, all right, there's something tricky to watch out for in measure 8. In the basic arrangement, I've got a pull-off going from 5th fret to 3rd fret on the G string. And it happens quickly in between a 5th string note. Then we've got the pull off from 5 to 3. And then that 1st string played with the middle finger. Now that's actually the easier way to play it. I think it'll be easier for a lot of maybe intermediate players. But the way that Ralph would actually play this lick, it's kind of his creation as far as I can tell. Maybe, you know, people have done something similar through the years, but it was part of his vocabulary. What's actually happening there, if you check in the licks, you know, go into the lick switcher and select the one that says Stanley style, is what he's doing is he's playing that 5th string, then he's picking the 2nd string at the 1st fret, which by the way is a C note. It's the same as 5th fret on the G string. So 5th string, then picking the 2nd string 1st fret, and then he's doing a really quick hammer on to the 3rd fret without ever picking that 3rd string note. Right? And that hammer on again is landing on the 3rd fret there. G string is landing before I pick that 1st string note. Right? Can you hear how it sounds the same as... Okay, just a really cool Ralph Stanley-ism, an alternate string hammer-on that happens in the middle of a forward roll. Okay, also, you know, doing this Ralph Stanley style, was thinking, you know, how would Earl play this? Because, you know, they're two of the most important figures in bluegrass history. And while Earl is considered like the granddaddy of the banjo, the godfather, Ralph, you know, carved out his own unique style. And two of the biggest things that separated their styles is the blues and the flavor of the blues that was added into each of their playing. So, I'm talking about Ralph first, since I was already talking about him. Ralph's has a much more minor leaning sound most of the time. You know, he did these... You know, that 3rd fret note and then coming off this 1st fret C. And he'd do that 3rd fret note on the D string too. So playing the flat 3rd or the flat 7 a lot with a little bend. You know, really getting that strong minor blues flavor. Whereas Earl's had a lot of this more major blues. You know, that might be more of what Earl would play with that lick, whereas Ralph, as he does in this transcription, right? It just has that more minor leaning feel. So in thinking about that, I wanted to approach the song, you know, with a more Scruggs style flavor. So we've got one that is labeled Scruggs style, and what we're doing is just using a bunch of essential Scruggs style licks. So all of the common banjo vocabulary that Earl would use is what we're using as a way to play I Am the Man Thomas. And again, we're using a lot of standard Scruggs licks that just focus on key melody notes. Now, if you don't already have a bunch of standard Scruggs licks memorized and in your back pocket, then go to the song list in Tunefox and check out essential Scruggs style licks. We've got a bunch of standard ones over G, C, and D, and you can check out the licks to explore some variations. Use the focus feature to practice each lick repeatedly and to listen to it before you practice it repeatedly so you understand how it's supposed to sound. Okay, so it's got a lot different flavor, you know, than the Ralph Stanley one. It has that more major leaning blues sound. All right, I also added Over the Waterfall again for banjo. This time, instead of playing out of open D with the 5th string spiked at the 7th fret, we're playing out of C shapes, but at capo 2 if you're jamming, you know, and that's going to put us in the key of D. If you're just learning this by yourself, you can just learn it, no capo here and no capo on your fifth string, play out of these C shapes, and it will sound awesome. So there is a whole heap of tablature arrangements to check out. Make sure to read those descriptions. It's got some tips on how to interpret it and things to practice. And there's also some links to some other things that you should use as warm-ups in your practice. There's a link to just some melodic style banjo, one of the learning paths that has videos that will help you learn the basics of melodic style. I've got a link in there for capo use, which if you don't know what I was talking about a second ago, you can watch that to learn about how and why we use capos, this type of capo, and then capos on our fifth string. And because there's some single string style arrangements in this one, of course, we got some links in there to our single string mini course and some warm-ups that are really good for your pick and hand. All right, that covers it for the banjo. Let's jump in and talk about what we have going on for the mandolin. All right, for mandolin, we've got Rocky Top. Rocky Top, it's an absolute classic, and this is a song that I'm teaching right now in a bluegrass band class at a local music academy. We have band classes every 2 to 2.5 months, so that's like a semester at our academy. And this semester we're doing songs from the 60s. And I was trying to think of big bluegrass songs from the 60s, and it doesn't get much bigger than Rocky Top. It's a song that a lot of people, after they've been doing bluegrass for a while, learn to hate. But it's a great song. It's got great lyrics, cool chord changes, longer form, and if you can get over yourself, it's big fun. So we got the melody here. Again, you got to learn the melody. You got to memorize the melody. You got to listen to this song so much that you can sing at least a verse and a chorus. That's really what I've been encouraging all my band students and individual students to do is, learn at least a verse and chorus, be able to play those melodies, and then tie that either to the basic chord changes. Where's the melody? This is a singing thing. I know how to play the melody. Okay, and since I know how to play the melody, I can find where that note is. Wish that it's way too high for my voice. Okay, so chord changes. Wish that I was on a rocky top down in the Tennessee hills. Right, learning to just do these basic strums and play through those chord changes as we sing the lyrics really helps us connect melody to chord changes, helps us memorize, helps us use those words as guideposts for these chord changes. So doing that with the chord changes and with actually playing the melody. Wish that I was on a rocky top down in the Tennessee hills. Right, learning at least one verse and one chorus, because while there might be 4 verses, the melody notes are pretty much the same, right? It's really just the words that are changing. So if we learn one verse, we can use that as a guide for all the chord changes in any verse and the melody, and same for the chorus. And with my students that have done this, I'm just noticing huge gains, right? They're just internalizing so many musical elements without even realizing it, because we're connecting language, spoken language, to the language of music. They're very intertwined. So we got the melody in 2 places. We got it up here in B because this is the standard key that this is played in. Thanks, Osborne Brothers. So we got it up here. And then we also have it up here in 2nd position. Right? 2nd position just means that our 1st finger is now hanging out where our 2nd finger normally is when we're playing in what we call 1st position, the most basic position. Because position playing on mandolin, if you don't know this, usually in your 1st position, 1st finger gets frets 1 and 2 most of the time. Middle finger will get frets 3 and 4. Whether it's on any string, it'll get one of those frets. Ring finger will get frets 5 and 6. And then pinky will get 7, sometimes 8. So that's 1st position. If we're in 2nd position, because our 2nd finger is normally on frets 3 and 4, then our 1st finger is hanging out around frets 3 or 4, right? That's 2nd position, and then our middle finger might be getting now frets 5 or 6, okay? And so on and so forth. Ring finger might get 7 and 8. Pinky might get 9 or even 10, right? That's 2nd position. A cool thing, a connection to make is in this First position, right? Look at the shape that's happening. Read the tablature. Notice the distance between notes, right? How many frets? Because it's the exact same pattern and shape down here. Right? We're just playing it an octave lower, but because of how the mandolin is tuned, we end up with these repeating shapes and patterns, which you'll notice those a lot more if you practice your scales. That's another thing I've been encouraging my students to do a lot, is practice the scale that matches the key of the song that you're working on, and do that as a warm-up. So for example, regardless of what you're working on with Rocky Top, practice your B major scale as a warm-up. Right? And I've added the B major scale and the B major pentatonic in first position and second position, so you guys can work on that. It's the basic scale along with the basic workout. The basic workouts are going to add in alternate picking. Don't do the workouts until the scales are really easy. And if you can't hold down multiple fingers like I'm doing, don't worry about that at first, right? Don't stress yourself out. Don't put your fingers into knots trying to do it the hard way. Do it the easy way at first. You probably, what needs to happen is you just need to build strength in each individual finger, and you can do that by just pressing down each finger one at a time, holding the note, letting it ring. You're engaging that muscle. You're building the strength. Then go to your second finger. Just hold that one down. You're engaging the muscle. You're building the strength, right? You need to do repetitions, of course, and take breaks, but don't always try to do things the hard way, because at first we just need to do it whatever way we can, and in a way that doesn't cause us injury or discouragement, which is an emotional injury. We don't need that. Okay, the next thing we've got in here is a measured tremolo and arpeggio. Measured tremolo, that's just where we're going to be picking kind of fast, but it's measured, it's even. There's a specific timing to it. We're not just doing a tremolo that has no regards to speed or timing, okay? So this is a good way to get your pick hand working on that tremolo. And don't get the pick too deep in the strings, right? We don't want the pick tip to go too far past the strings this way. That's going to get it stuck. We just want to try to play with the tip of the pick. Okay, that's going to help for your tremolo. And something else that can help in Tunefox, go to Tremolo 101. That's a basic tremolo learning path we have that has some exercises and some video lessons on learning to play tremolo with different timings, different subdivisions of timing. Okay, so how this one sounds. Okay, so we got the measured tremolo, and then we've got arpeggio, which is just chord notes one at a time. Okay, so there's something great to learn, because you learn your important notes that if you're taking a solo, you can just play one of those chord tones and not even worry about the melody. But also arpeggios are used in melodies that are important, and a good exercise for your fretting hand as well. Check out the licks on that one. It's got some more embellishments to add after you get a hang of the basics. But I wanted to make some that had a simple concept that you guys could understand. So hopefully once you understand this, you can start to apply it in some different ways when you learn some different chord tones, or even to another song once you learn the basic melody and the chord tones that matches that. The one label Bluegrass, just it has some different elements. So we'll have some basic melody, and then some arpeggios. And then we got some of those blue notes you heard me playing, and some lead-in notes that lead into the next phrase. It's got a little bit more complex arpeggios too, where we're using the pinky, right? So just a little bit more going on. If you need to, like if you like that one but it's kind of hard, you can use the difficulty slider in Tunefox to make it a little bit easier. And again, just go a measure at a time or 2 measures at a time if you need to, using the focus feature. If you're new to arpeggios, we've got an arpeggio etude for Rocky Top. An etude is just a fancy word for study. So you're going to study some different arpeggios for the chords in Rocky Top. And it sounds really cool. Right, and it's going to go through on the chorus too. Right, so learning these arpeggios are just a foundational thing. These shapes can be used to match other chords as well, like a lot of these, like the main one I'm using. It starts on a B note, right? So if I use the same shape, where I'm going up 4 frets on the A string and then going up 5 frets on the E string, if I move that to a different note, it's going to make an arpeggio that matches that note. And it's a major arpeggio, by the way. If I change just one note, it'd be a minor. So this is a B note. If I move it up to the 5th fret, which is a D, I move up 4 frets from that note, and then 5 frets from this note, and I've got a D major arpeggio. Right, so we can move that around, and that'll work on any 2 string sets on the mandolin. For example, 2nd fret of the D string is an E note. Boom, E major arpeggio, right? So learning these arpeggio shapes is something that's great and can be applied to other songs and other chord progressions once you start to learn where those notes are on the mandolin neck. Make sure to check out some of the licks in that one. It just showed you some alternate arpeggios and some alternate combinations to get some new and more interesting sounds besides just that basic version that we're offering you there. All right, so we got those different versions of Rocky Top and the collection of B major scales for mandolin this month. I'm going to go ahead and talk about what's going on with guitar for February. All right, guitar. Not only do we have some tab, but we've got some new video lessons for several of the arrangements of Blackberry Blossom. So I put up an overview video, so when you go to Blackberry Blossom in the song list, I've just got a little video that I did explaining, the different tablatures that we have and different arrangements, what's good about them, who they're good for, what to look out for, ways to practice. And then there's a lesson on the basic bluegrass arrangement, which is like this. So there's a lesson on that that's giving you some practice tips, talking about some of the licks, and just breaking it down a piece at a time. So for some of you guys that are more wanting to learn by video and less by tablature, instead of using your eyes to look at the notes on the page, you can watch my hands. So learn a little bit by ear and a little bit just by watching where my hands are going. And so I break it down really slow, talking about, G string playing, down, down, up with the pick, and then D string, 4th fret, and so on and so forth. But it takes you through it really slow, has a playthrough example. So check that out. And if you want to learn a little bit more by the video and just to learn in conjunction with the tablature, because like I said, there's a lot of other good information in that video for learning that really simple version of Blackberry Blossom. So along with that basic version of Blackberry Blossom, I've also got a video up for the one that's just labeled Bluegrass, which is the standard way most people play this tune. A lot of notes, a lot of scale patterns. Speaking of that, and I'll talk about this in those videos as well, but make sure you're practicing the scale that matches the song you're working on. And do it as a warm-up, right? So really doing this basic scale nice and slow as a warm-up. G major, both octaves. I've got it in the song list for Tunefox. Right? So doing the G major scale, like I said, both octaves. Right? And some of those workouts too that use scale patterns. That was Blackberry Blossom, but you can see it's very pattern based. And I was trying to play the basic scale pattern, but because Blackberry Blossom uses scale patterns, I went into that song instead of just the basic pattern, which is this. Right? So we've got some patterns like that that are descending, like what I just did, and ascending. So on and so forth. But these are great exercises for your picking hand and for your fret hand. And these scale patterns are so common in fiddle tunes, so you want to really get a good handle on them. And then along with the basic bluegrass version and the bluegrass lead version, there's a video for the rhythm. So learning the chord progression. Right, so first you learn the chords, the progression, the order of chords, and then I talk about adding in some different strum patterns and stuff like that. So make sure to check out those Blackberry Blossom videos and let us know what you think. Okay. So we got new videos for a song that we've had, and also Rocky Top is the new songs that we're adding in the song list. Okay, so got a bunch of stuff going on for Rocky Top. We have the melody, of course, and like I've been telling the mandolin players and the banjo players, you got to start with the melody and ideally memorize the verse and the chorus, because if we can memorize those melody notes and tie them not only to the melody with the individual notes. Time to that's going to help us with our timing on playing the melody, but also to the basic chord changes. Because it really can help you navigate those changes when you use those words as a guide. Right? I know when I'm saying on that I need to go to C chord. Rocky Top. And I know when I say Rocky Top again that it's going back to the G. Down in the, I know when I'm saying down in the, it ties to the E minor chord, so on and so forth. So listen a lot, that's going to help your ear. But also in the tablature, you'll see the lyrics beneath the melody, and you can see how those kind of tie into and connect to those chord changes. And at first, you just want to try strumming once per measure, or whenever a chord switches, and saying or singing those words as you play these different chord changes. Wish love was on Rocky Top, down in the Tennessee hills. Ain't no smoky smoke on Rocky Top, ain't no telephone bills. Just a really good foundational thing to work on and really understanding a song. Okay, we've got a bunch of other kind of lead options and a bunch of studies that are going to help you get a little bit better command over your slurs, your hammer-ons, and your pull-offs, and your arpeggios as well. So we're using Rocky Top as a vehicle to study our guitar technique, and at the same time, you get the extra benefit of learning a bunch of different ways that you can interpret this tune. All right, so for the hammer-on etude, etude is just a word for study, we're going to be using a lot of hammer-ons in those key melody notes. So knowing the key melody notes, memorizing that melody first before you jump into these more complex versions is going to help you know where those important melody notes are, so we can maybe pick them a little bit harder so we stand out, and just so we know how these more complex versions even connect to Rocky Top, right? It's not just nonsense, right? We're playing bits of the melody and using these other embellishments just to lift it up a little bit. Okay, So using these hammer-ons and again key melody notes. And then we've also got, just at one point, a little chromatic walk, which leads back into those main melody notes. So we've got that chromatic walk, and the rest of the time when you're using these hammer-ons, we're using bits of the G major pentatonic scale. So along with practicing the G major scale, the G major pentatonic will be good to work on for this version as a warm-up. And with those chromatic lead-in notes, they happen in the middle of the song, but at the end as well. And so it's going to lead right back into the beginning. That way you can play the whole song as an exercise, right? I really found, I can remember, I don't know, maybe 10 or 15 years ago, probably more like 15, where it's like I used to have the goal to just play through a song once. But then at some point when it was like, no, I want to be able to play through it multiple times, I feel like that really helped me become a lot better player. So using the whole song as an exercise and not just trying to go from beginning to end can be something that helps you just get better as a guitar player. And we've got a bunch of licks in that one as well, so make sure to check those out if you get a handle on the basics. And try to analyze what you're learning, right? Listen, right? So we start to know how it's supposed to sound, but then read and analyze. And if you see the same measure happening 5 or 10 times, then when you're first learning the song, just learn that one measure. You know, use the focus feature in Tunefox, play it a bunch. If you get that down, then all the others will be a cakewalk. And the same thing, you know, if you see another measure over here, well, it happens right there, but it also happens, you know, measure 12 and measure 15, whatever. Just practice that one measure. So that way, when you're first tackling a tune, you learn these foundational elements that are happening a bunch, get good at those, and when you try to put it all together, it should be a lot easier, okay? But if you need to, sometimes there's moments of transition where you might need to link 2 measures even after you get the fundamental pieces. But anyways, attacking it more strategic like that with a plan can sometimes be more efficient and less frustrating than just going beginning to the end over and over when you're first learning something. All right, the slurs etude is very similar, but instead of hitting the melody low and using a bunch of slurs on these low strings, we're starting out on the higher strings. Right, so we're starting out on the higher strings and using hammer-ons, using some slides, using some pull-offs, using some slides at different places. So using a lot of these unison slides, which is where we slide up on one string, say the 2nd string from 3rd to 5th fret. And so from there, I'm sliding from 3 to 5 on the 2nd string, which is a D note to an E note. And then I'm playing an open E after. It's a unison slide because we're sliding into a note that we're going to play on the open string. So we're doing that at a bunch of places. Doing it on 3rd string. And then doing it on 4th string as well. And these are just like common bluegrass guitar tricks and licks. And if you've learned the melody, which again, you should always learn the melody, you'll notice that we're using these common bluegrass licks and tricks over important melody notes. So anytime you're playing a song, almost anytime you're playing a song, and the melody note is on an open E string, that'll be a great little lick to add in. Or anytime the melody note's on a B string, that would be a great lick to add in, so on and so forth. So this is a great study that, again, will give you some vocabulary that can be used in other situations, especially if we're thinking critically about what we're learning as we learn it. We've got some more etudes. A lot of these are arpeggio etudes, which means we're going to be playing chord notes one at a time. So we've got some simple ones here that are just very obvious chord tones. You know, they're built right out of chord shapes that hopefully a lot of you guys are familiar with. If not, check out our learning path for basic bluegrass guitar. We've got some video lessons on just learning some of your basic chords and basic rhythms. But these arpeggio etudes for Rocky Top. Again, we're just going to be playing chord tones one at a time. But in a way that also sort of gets us close to the melody of Rocky Top. So it's a pretty cool way to learn the important notes that match the chord, and to show you that chords are not just to be played as strums. They can be melodies when we play those notes one at a time, and that's exactly what an arpeggio is, a melodic arpeggio. Okay, so we've got an arpeggio etude on the bass strings, and then one on the treble strings as well. So those are going to get you familiar with the important chord tones. And then the ones labeled rhythmic phrasing are cool because it takes us from a constant stream of notes and teaches us to add in some of those pauses, because some of those pauses really help us to form musical sentences. Just like spoken language, pauses are important. We don't want to just be talking all the time. It's not good. We got to add those pauses in there so we have some music to our language and some sentences, some beginning and ends. So check those out. Try to notice the patterns by listening and by analyzing what you're reading. All right, that's it for guitar. I'm going to talk a little bit about the Clawhammer Banjo tunes. All right, for Clawhammer Banjo, we've got the Ballad of Jed Clampett. Usually this song is associated with bluegrass banjo playing. But considering it's about a hillbilly that got rich, I think the song sort of belongs. The Clawhammer Banjo at least is very appropriate, and it sounds cool and is a lot of fun to play. So we've got the melody, which you should learn that and try to both sing or say the words as you play through the melody notes, and ideally try to memorize some of those verse lyrics. Come and listen to a story about a man named Jed. You don't have to sing them, you can play that. Poor mountaineer barely kept his family fed. Right? I was trying to do it by memory instead of just looking at the tablature. It's always good to memorize stuff, and repetitive listening helps with that. Okay, so saying or singing the melody notes as you play it helps with your memory, helps boost your musicality in magical human ways. And also doing that with the basic chord changes. So like, come and listen to my story about a man named Jed. Poor mountaineer barely kept his family fed. And then one day he was shooting at some food, and up from the ground come a bubbling. Okay? Again, you could just say it, but these lyrics can serve as a guidepost, because changes in the melody where it goes up and down is often tied to the chord changes. Come and listen to my story about a man, or come and listen to my story about a man named Jed. Right? It went down a bunch in the melody. And also, thinking of the words, when it goes to the word Jed, that's when it goes to that D chord. And I'm just playing a simple D7. If you don't know a lot of your basic chord shapes, click on the chord bubbles in the tablature in Tunefox, and a little chord diagram will pop up, and that's a way you can learn some your basic simple chords so you can play along with this thing. Right? So, and then the lyrics are in the tablature as well, so if you're not hearing how it connects with listens, you can use the tablature as a visual aid and see how the words line up with those chord changes. And right now I'm just strumming at the beginning of each measure. So that's a great way to get a good foundation going on any new tune you learn, is to learn how to play the melody, say or sing the words as you play it, and then say or sing the words as you play through those chord changes. I recommend doing that before jumping into any complex version of a tune that you're learning. So after the melody, we have a bum ditty version, which is just where we add in that classic clawhammer maneuver. Right? Sounds like a donkey to me always. I don't know why. maybe because it sort of sounds like a donkey when he goes that really high pitch. So bum ditty, if you don't know what that is, check out the learning path in Tunefox. We've got some video lessons on learning those clawhammer foundations. So we'll apply the bum ditty to the melody. Okay, so that could be tricky, you know, but you want to learn the melody first and have a good handle on your bum ditty. And if you do that, you know, you can learn this in sections and then start to put the whole thing together. Another good tip here as you're learning this, you know, sometimes you're doing the bum ditty where you're striking a string on the third finger or on the third string. And then you're going to have to go to the fourth string next, whatever. But paying attention to your pick hand, and then notice the distance between your thumb and your index when you're going from like fourth string to third string, right? So noticing that distance can help you navigate when you have to make those string changes. And then also if you're looking at the tablature, sometimes only playing what's happening in the pick hand and leaving out the fretting notes can be an effective way to practice pick hand challenges. For example, in measure 3, we've got a bum ditty on the B string, and then we've got a bum ditty on the G string, but it starts with a fretted note. So you might not even be thinking totally about the picking hand here because there's multiple things going on. But if we take out what's going with the fretting hand, it allows you to just focus on the picking hand. Right, so there I was adding the fretting note in, but if I take out the fretted note, I've just got a bum ditty on the B string and a bum ditty on the G string. Okay, I'm getting it cleanly because I've been playing clawhammer for a while, but you know, if it's new to you, you might not get it cleanly. That's okay. Then you just exercise that section until it starts to get a little bit easier. Then you go on to another measure and you do that same process. You know, if you're having trouble playing the right hand or the picking hand pattern with the fretting notes, just work on that picking hand. We've also got a backup version which just shows you a simple way to apply some bum ditties with chords in a way that would support a vocalist, whether that's you singing it or a friend singing it or a family member or whatever. But it just shows us how we're going to strike like a low string and then a chord and then pop that fifth string with a thumb to get a supportive chordal sound using the bum ditty on Clawhammer Banjo. Come and listen to my story about a man named Jed. Poor mountaineer barely kept his family fed. And then one day he was shooting at some blue, getting up from the ground, come a bubbling crew. Oil wells, Blackberry, Texas tea. Okay. I went a little bit fast on the spoken part there at the end, but you get the point. We've got this simple bum ditty chordal backup, which is great for supporting the vocal of this tune. And you can check out the licks for some maybe more advanced and more embellished stuff you can play as backup also. Lastly, we've got like a more full-fledged kind of clawhammer version of this tune. So it's going to incorporate everything so far. We're going to have melody, we're going to have bum ditty, we're going to have chords, but we're also going to have some slurs to embellish this even further. So some hammer-ons, some slides. We're even going to have some more, couple of these skip rhythm patterns. And those are going to be great fills that come and add some rhythmic interest in between those spaces in the melody where we have like a long space and there's not any melody stuff happening. It fills the space. great on Clawhammer Banjo. All right, so that's the rundown for all the content that we have this month. I wanted to give a few teacher tips. This based on just stuff that I think is good for you guys to practice, stuff that I use with my students, stuff that I end up using with myself for my own practice. And the first one is going to be trying to play with your eyes closed, not looking at the screen, not looking at the paper, not looking at your hands even. And this might be really tough if you've never done this before. So, side story, I recently had a corneal ulcer. So an ulcer on the cornea of my eye. It made it really hard to see, made it really hard to keep my eye open. So instead of looking at my hands, what I would do is come into the practice room and just play completely with my eyes closed. And even trying to play some stuff like higher up the neck without looking that usually I would look, because sometimes making big shifts or playing up the neck is a little bit tough for me, and I might need to look to help give myself some extra help to land that. But I was trying to practice stuff that's hard for me with my eyes closed. So I want to encourage you to do the same thing. Now, playing a whole song might be out of the question, especially if you don't have it memorized. But here's where we can start. Just by closing our eyes and reaching out, maybe let's do with our fret hand first, because usually, we're pickers, we're playing with picks. We can't really feel with our picks. We can feel our picks, but we can't feel what our picks feel. However, we can feel what we feel with the fret hand. And just reach out and get your hand around the neck or thumb behind the neck and just feel up to that first string. Okay, I feel the first string. Now I'm going to slide to the left. Now feel where the nut is, okay? So that's where the string starts to be able to be fretted, and now I can feel it slide up against the first fret, okay? And it's just starting to get an understanding of your instrument completely by touch and not by your sense of sight, not by looking at what these frets look like and where your hand's supposed to go, but feeling where your hand's supposed to go. And then maybe I could feel up to the second string, right? It's the one right above it. Feeling where these frets are again, going back to the nut, staying in places that you would usually play, and going to the third string and the fourth string and what have you, right? And the same thing with our pick hand. We can close our eyes, reach, and right, I'm going to drag my thumb over the head. Now it's touching the fifth string, right? And I can touch that pick to those different strings, maybe even play it some to get used to it. So that's a good way to get used to just the basic, feeling your instrument, not just seeing your instrument. Feel it. But then some basic exercises like some scales or some roll patterns or some picking patterns are great to start practicing with your eyes closed. Stuff that's repetitive, stuff that's not too hard, stuff to where you can feel your way around it. So for like banjo, maybe your alternate roll pattern. I'm going to pick or feel with my thumb. I need to get to the third string because that's usually where we start on an alternate roll. And then I'm going to play the third string. And then I'm going to feel with my first finger. Here's the first string, second string. Play it, and now I got to get this thumb back to the fifth. Okay, play that, and then drag this middle finger to the first. Repeat that, don't open your eyes again. Get it by feeling. Eventually, after you get used to it enough, just practicing the whole rolls or your different rolls. So for some of you, this might be really easy in what you just watched. Sorry, that's for people who are just beginning. We want to encourage beginners and give them the tools to succeed. So that was for beginners or people who are just beginning to play with your eyes closed. But if you're more experienced, dive in. Do everything you can with your eyes closed. I think it's a really good exercise for your hands, your sense of touch, and your ears. Again, trying your scales or your scale patterns. And if you are a more intermediate advanced player, trying for whole songs, or like I was talking about, trying to work on some of these big shifts. And you'll miss it, but you'll also probably surprise yourself as to the things that you can do if you put your mind to it. And the benefits you get from it, I think, are really great. Often you're more relaxed when your eyes are closed. And again, we're engaging our ears and our sense of touch more, which is super important for us musicians. Another thing that I've said throughout this, to all the mandolin players, all the banjo players, is saying or singing the words to the melody as you play the melody and as you play and strum through your basic chord changes. I've just seen so much benefit in my private students and my band students who have done this. They just get big boost in their musicality, big boost in their memorization for the melody and the chord changes. It's just so powerful tying spoken language to the language of music. They're deeply intertwined. They benefit each other. Give it a shot, do it again. You don't have to sing, you can just say and speak in time, but understanding how the ups and downs of the melody tie to the chord progression and how certain words line up with certain chord changes, super beneficial. For example, Ballad of Jed Clampett, it's a song we're doing in a bluegrass band class that I teach at a local academy. I'm just going to say the words and strum through the chord pattern. Come and listen to my story about a man named Jed. Poor mountaineer, barely kept his family fed, right? So knowing some of how these lyrics line up can help me memorize the chord changes. Come and listen to my story about a man. I know right when it says man that I'm going to that A minor chord. Named Jed. I know when it says Jed, I'm going to the D7. Give this a shot. I'm telling you, you need to do it. It'll help you, and you might end up loving it. And give singing a shot too. Don't be afraid to sing. Don't be afraid of the joy that you might experience. It will overwhelm the embarrassment at some point. Another teacher tip here is a way to practice scales that's great for beginners or great when you're tackling a new scale that's tough for you. This is an exercise I'll usually use with some of my students that I know are not practicing and are having tough times digesting new information. Sometimes a 7-note scale is too much for some people. That's okay. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to take the first 2 notes of a scale and just go back and forth. Exercise. That's going to exercise your hands and exercise your ears. So for example, like the simple G major scale on banjo, I'm going to go between open and 2. I'm going to do it a lot. This is an exercise, right? Okay? And this can be applied to any instrument, not just banjo. Again, taking a scale, going between the first and second notes, doing it a bunch. Guess what we're going to do next? Second and third notes. Do it a bunch. Trying to keep even timing, right? Incorporating some timing. Then we go second, third note, so on and so on. But this can be something good, like I said, even for like some early intermediate players. Maybe if you're just learning the melodic scale, that can be super confusing to some people. But taking this approach with that is a great way to practice it. Then the second and third notes. Just going back and forth. So, when you look at these scales in Tunefox or wherever you're learning it from, look at what those first and second notes are. Go back and forth a bunch. Exercise. Look at what the second and third are. Exercise. So you can do that going up the scale and going back down, but just taking 2 notes at a time. You can take this further though, like instead of just doing 2 notes back and forth, you could do 3 notes. So the melodic scale going the first 3 notes. And exercising. All right, notes 2, 3, and 4. It's a great way to get familiar with the scale, and you'll end up stumbling onto some music. It might sound familiar to something you've played before. Explore that, try to figure out different melodies that are floating around in your head. All right, that's the end of the teacher tips. We'll cut it off there. I hope you guys enjoy the new content. I hope it helps. Keep sending in those user requests. A lot of the new tunes that we're added this month are based on that, and the more requests we get for a specific song, that song jumps up the queue list, okay? So we've got a lot in the queue. It's hard to get to it all, but if we get the same request, or if we get multiple requests for the same song, that song becomes more of a priority, and we move it up the list, okay? So keep sending those in. Keep picking. Have fun. Hope you guys enjoy it. Stay tuned. We'll see you soon.